Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. And I'm not gonna lie, I sometimes worry that people get sick of these because I just counted how many of these I have, and we're talking over 50. 51 or 52, depending on whether or not you count that one I deleted. But I love it, so we're going to keep going. Now today is a book that I probably should have reviewed before. It's one of the ones that got away from me during the holidays. But today we are reviewing The Dragon Plague by Anna Mantovani. This is a really cool concept, I think, because it's kind of a mix of high fantasy dragons with dystopian plague world building. Essentially, years and years before the beginning of our story, dragons just came back from extinction. Apparently they were once real, ancient maybe even prehistoric, and they came back, and with that came a plague. And the plague has a 95% mortality rate, and if you survive, you end up covered in scales, and they say you're basically a monster. And this entire city of Europa, which really is less of a city and more like a giant city-state, is considered the only safe place left from this plague, and as a result, people are constantly paranoid about it. Everywhere you go, you constantly have to let them prick your finger to test your blood for the infection. And it's a pretty interesting setup. Unfortunately, at the beginning, it was a little bit slow to take off. We have two protagonists. Eric, what is a medical cop in this world, his job is to track down the infected. Because the plague is so incredibly contagious, simple skin-to-skin contact with an infected person can transfer it to you. It becomes a matter of, well, not national security, it's not really a nation, but a matter of security to track down all the infected, or those that are connected to the infected, this rebel group led by a man called the General. And our other protagonist is a young doctor named Sophie, and she's not really a doctor, and as we know it, she was trained after the fact, so her medical knowledge is kind of incomplete. But she works with this renowned doctor named Amanda, who's working on a vaccine. Well, lo and behold, she might have an idea. This older woman named Emma comes in, and she has antibodies for the plague, meaning that she had it at one point and survived it and now can fight back against it. She essentially can't get infected. But what should be a cause for great joy ends up not being one, because Amanda is arrested and they go on the hunt for Emma, and Sophie kind of finds herself now being Emma's caretaker. So both of our protagonists, before this hit-off point, have pretty boring lives. They both are very much defined by that following the status quo. You know, Sophie lives in this tiny little room, has next to no friends outside of Amanda, but that's just the way life is, and is pretty dedicated to that. Eric is also kind of boring as his own personal life goes. He has a family, a wife, Thea, and two kids, but he's older, and the relationship in his marriage is kind of dwindled, and they don't talk, and his kids. It's basically the story of a man whose family life has kind of gotten away from him. So it almost feels a little too dull in the very beginning, considering the fact that you have a dragon plague. But once it picks up, it really starts picking up, and both of our main characters follow the standard realizing that something is wrong arc that a lot of dystopian characters do. They started realizing that certain things they were told about the dragon plague, or certain things they were told about, in Eric's case, people he was arresting that may not actually have been infected, that it's actually really cool. They had this sort of underlying commentary about basically people's civil rights being stolen because of the infection. So if the government says, oh, this person is infected, they're robbed of all civil rights. They can just disappear and their family can never track them down. And that idea of using a status like that to rob of civil rights, I mean, I try not to draw parallels because I don't think this was the analogy she was going for, but it reminded me of things like in the mid-aughts when being labeled a terrorist could get your civil rights stripped, even if there wasn't very much information to that charge. And I can't really say that that was a theme going on, because there wasn't much else in the way of that, but just that idea of having this thing that once you're declared this, you're basically not considered a person anymore, even if it's wrong. And I think I would have liked that to be a little more looked into, and I think it might be in the sequel. This is a trilogy, and I would love to see that explored just a little bit more, because a lot of this is running around and kind of trying to stay safe, and essentially the two of them finding out just how wrong they were about their entire world. And it's very difficult, of course, to talk about, like, basically the second half of the book onwards, because it's a lot of twists and turns and spoilers and who are these rebels. And admittedly, if you read these kind of books a lot, you'll probably figure it out. It was actually some thoughts I had while reading this one in particular, but I couldn't fault this particular story because of it. But it was that idea of, you already know that the main characters and their thoughts about the city or government they live under isn't exactly right, or they don't see the whole picture. So there's a lot of sitting around waiting for them to catch on. Sophie in particular kind of aggravated me, where, like, Eric, yeah, I could kind of understand because he's still working as a cop for most of this. So obviously he's not going to assume the government he's working for as a cop is bad. But, like, she has a lot more hands-on information to be like, you know, things are not what you thought they were. But it takes her a very long time to accept that. And it also takes her a very long time to accept that, like, yeah, your life just isn't gonna go back to normal. She talks a lot about, oh, when all this is over, even though it's like, you're low-key a fugitive from the law, so I don't know what you think you're gonna do, even after you help Emma get to where she needs to be. But once that whole, oh gosh, I've been wrong arc really set in, I really started liking them a lot more. But what sold this book for me the most was the ending. I love twist endings that I can't see coming or that I didn't see coming. Now, that doesn't mean you can just throw something in from left field and have it work. You need to be able to rethink some things from earlier in the story to make that plot twist seem feasible. And this one has multiple. And it's awesome. In the last, 50 pages or so, there's two gigantic plot twists. And it's basically like one for each protagonist. And one of which was heartbreaking. And one of which felt like out of left field at first, but then when I thought about some other things characters had said and some other references characters had made, including one reference that's at the very end of the story that references something else earlier. And it literally made me laugh out loud because I was literally going, that's what that meant? It was really funny. And obviously I'm trying not to spoil, but I really liked that, and I genuinely did not see either of them coming. There was one where I swore I had it figured out, and I was like, wow, they're really just gonna reveal this now when the reader already basically knows. But the reader did not know. I didn't know. So I loved the ending especially. It really showed Sophie's arc particularly well, and her final acceptance into, this is just my life now, I need to accept this and accept that things weren't what I thought and move forward. And there was also the beginnings of a romance for one of our characters, and I didn't see it coming, and it feels really bad to say this. I didn't necessarily believe it because me personally, I got too caught up in the generic romance conventions that I did not see these two people as being a couple. And then when I went and I read through a little bit after another character offhandedly mentioned that, oh yeah, so-and-so has a crush on so-and-so. And I went back and looked and said, oh no, there is a setup for this. My, dumbass just focused so much on the standard romance tropes that I assumed that it would be, the protagonist would fall in love with the first kind of attractive looking dude she met. So that was on me. But I low-key do like the relationship that forms, and I'm really intrigued by it. And I am super interested in reading the next one in this series. In general, I just love this premise. I love taking dragons, which can kind of be overdone in fantasy, but mixing them up with a dystopian plague and all of the emphasis on governments and watch lists and everything that can fall apart there, but also dragons. So really, it's the best of both worlds. My only other major complaint would be I want more dragons. You didn't get a ton of time with them in this book in particular, but I think the next one might help with that a little bit more. I'm also low-key hoping that we could get different characters' points of view, but I'm not entirely sure. Regardless, I gave this book 4 stars, despite a very slowish start and some characters that I kind of wanted to push forward in the story. Once they got there, they really got there, and that ending was absolutely fantastic. Would highly recommend for anyone that likes either dragons or dystopia. Now, if you are an indie author and you would like a video review like this one, please email me. I will have my email down in the description below. I will also have my review policy down there. Please give that a read through. It answers a lot of questions and saves us a lot of time. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.